Okay, so like I said, today I want to talk about emotional intelligence. It's something that gets bandied about quite a lot, and I'm not sure if everybody really understands it, particularly when we're talking about our horses and how we present ourselves to our horses, because a lot of emotional intelligence has a lot to do with emotional awareness. And it forms, I think, a foundation of the trust and the connection within the relationship. By having that awareness of emotional intelligence, it's more than just managing our emotions. It's about understanding them as well, and understanding the emotional states, because we all know when we're emotional, but there is nuances within that emotion of the states that we are in. And a key to that is obviously recognizing the emotions of our horses and responding in a way that creates an environment of safety, because we can be as empathetic as we like and we can have the best connection as we like, but we know that horses exist in a state of safety. That's their optimum state, shall I say, in a state of safety. And I think this is where, for me, it's a fundamental key point of the Rewild coaching, that we can build all our interactions on awareness for ourselves in certain degrees and our horses in the other degree. So where we share our traits, we have that same trust and awareness. But where we have different traits, we can switch that with an emphasis on safety and emphasis on the empathy with our horses, and with other humans it would be empathy and connection. So how are we defining emotional intelligence? So the first thing, like I say, is the awareness of our own and our horse's emotions. I think this is foundation of emotional intelligence for both of us. Managing and using emotions to enhance communication, because we all know that when we can have more, when we're more aware of our emotions, we become clearer and more intentional with our communication, and we are able to manage that better. And responding to emotional cues with awareness. So again, not reaction, more response, and having thoughtful responses that deepen those emotional trust and connection, build those trust and connection bridges. So emotional intelligence, I think, begins with recognizing and understanding emotions, both our own and our horses. So this means taking the time to notice how emotions are showing up in our bodies, and how that impacts on our behavior, and how that conversation, that internal conversation, also impacts on our horse's behavior when the emotions and the stresses affects their body, and how that comes out in a physical dialogue. And you'll see this in very simple terms like ear positionings or muscle tension, but then there are the more subtle signs where the rhythm of breathing changes, and we have to therefore be really aware and informed that it's not a problem to fix, it is a state to be aware of. And the next step to managing these emotions for us might mean calming our nerves, so breathing and keeping our actual heightened emotions within threshold, so that we don't become frustrated. And for our horses, it is about creating an environment, like I said earlier, where they feel safe, where they can relax. And this emotional management is what enhances communication, allowing both the horse and the human to feel heard and understood without overwhelm. Because often when we are driven by emotions, we become overwhelmed by the smaller things because we're not managing. And this is not about micromanaging or not being emotional. This is about managing and being aware of the emotions that we're feeling in any moment. And I think the real power of emotional intelligence, I think, lies in responding to that emotional dialogue. And that's where your awareness comes in. So not reacting impulsively. And whether it's a moment of anxiety in our horses or excitement in ourselves, the ability to pause and assess and respond is the moment that our horses understand that this is a mutual experience, and that empathy does have a two-way path between the horse and the human. And I think it will help us approach our horses feeling safer in our own ability, and that will also create security in our horses. So understanding emotional intelligence from the human perspective. So the first one obviously is the self-awareness. Noticing and naming your emotions is the first step towards emotional balance. And I do talk sometimes about using your words, because once you've used your words, it creates an energetic force around them. And it is the same with our emotions. If we can name them, if we can be brave enough to understand them, then we're going to be able to understand where the threshold is as we move forward with them. And the second one is self-regulation. So I talk a lot about self-regulation, and horses that have self-regulation are able to cope better than those that can't, and it's the same for ourselves. So managing how we express emotions prevents that tension and fosters a much more calm environment that we can inhabit internally. And empathy, and understanding that horses' emotions helps you meet their needs with compassion. So this is part of bringing those two components together, and it leads into a communication. And that expression of emotions, once it is clear, it is also calm, and that is again another building block of trust and understanding. I think emotional intelligence for us as humans starts with that self-awareness, and it becomes a superpower. If we can notice and name them, we're going to be feeling at any given moment powerful, empowered to be able to understand how we're going to react in any situation, because we understand our own emotions. I think without this awareness, we can feel out of control. That's when we lose the control. And it leads to those unintentional reactions that impact our dialogues that we have with others, including our horses. So by taking that moment just to identify the emotion, I think helps us regain that clarity and composure. And the next step, I think, is within the self-regulation, is how we express those emotions. So, for example, if we're feeling frustrated and it's all bubbling up inside us, particularly while we're working with our horses, if we can self-regulate, we're going to help that dialogue flow rather than be jagged in any way. So by pausing and taking a breath, that is the moment that we can start to reach for the response, that thoughtful response, and it will dilute the tension and again remove that confusion. Empathy within the emotional intelligence field is a bridge that bridges between understanding ourselves and connecting with others, and including our horses. And I think it allows us to tune into our horses' emotions and recognize how our behaviors might affect their feelings and respond with compassion. And this creates a space where, again, your horse feels safe and understood. And I can't repeat that enough. And so I will. And finally, with communication, it ties it all together. Because if we can express our emotions and our intentions in a way that is clear but not overwhelming, whether that is through voice or body language, but with always energy, some energetic dialogue, then our communication will be flow, will have flow, it will be calm, it will have confidence, and our horses and others around us are more likely to mirror that energy, and it will build trust and foster a much deeper, more profound connection. Oh, that should say horses, not humans. Understanding emotional intelligence in horses. Reading your horse's emotional state. So horses are communicating all the time, and they're communicating with emotion all the time as a mammal. And most of it will come through their body language, or certainly that is the where we will see it more, because that is where we are tuned in more. The signs of fear, calm, frustration, and joy in horses, again, are all represented with a physical cue, like with ear position or eye expression, muscle tension, and movement. Movement also reveals a lot about their feelings, when they need to move their feet, when they can't stand still, if they're pawing the ground, etc. Of course, they are communicating their emotions also without any physical anything noticeably physical. But because we are visual and because we are tactile, it is the easiest thing for us to pick up on in the first instance. So I don't have any problem people concentrating on the physical, as long as when we develop our awareness, we can move into the emotional, into the energetic responses that our horses are having as well. And how we respond to our horses' emotions, I think empathy again here is key, and acknowledging their emotions builds that trust and creates that partnership. And this again, awareness, you know, I use the word awareness a lot because it is the one thing that I think that will get us across that bridge in any conversation that we have with our horses, is awareness. And it doesn't mean to say it has to be perfect, doesn't have to be even a great conversation, but as long as we are aware of what is happening, we are able to cross that bridge. And I think horses, it's underrated, or certainly not spoken of very much, how incredibly emotionally intelligent horses are. If you think about how they are always observing and responding, that is how they're having their dialogue. They observe and then they respond to the world around them. Their emotional state is always at play. And to connect with our horses on this deep level, I think it's essential to learn how to read those emotional cues. And even though horses don't hide their feelings, the way that they express them, once we've taken away the layer of body language, it becomes much more difficult. So this is why we have to start first and foremost with the body. And I think understanding all these tiny signals allows us to identify the emotions. And I think the key emotions with our horses, where we have to really understand, there's many, of course, but fear, I think, is a principal emotion. When they're calm, because, you know, it's not all bad, emotions are good as well. Frustration and joy. Those four pillars of emotions have a lot in them. So fear, anxiety, tension. Calm is a state of willingness, of communication. Frustration, anger. You know, those four pillars, fear, calm, frustration, and joy, are an umbrella for many other emotions that they are able to express. And I think if we are we can't dismiss the emotions that the horses are having. And I think this is one of the things that really frustrates me, is the fact that horses are considered not to be emotional creatures. And they are placed in a tool to do. And I think obviously this comes back to touching on what we spoke about last time, is the fact that the horses for us in our ancestry were means of transport, were beasts of burden. So I think it's really important to understand that although that was how we were looking at it and how people still look at it, we need to be on the forefront of understanding our horse's emotional intelligence so that we can truly build that dialogue that we want to have with them. So the link between emotional intelligence and trust. Because again, awareness is key. Safety and horses feeling safe and our safety is always key. And trust is always key. It's always going to be part of our conversations. So why trust is built through emotional awareness. Emotional awareness shows your horse you are present and reliable. How emotional responses impact the bond between you and your horse, while you and your horse, your reactions can strengthen trust or create doubt in your horse's mind. And building trust through empathy and emotional regulation. Well, empathy and calmness help you build a partnership based on safety and awareness. So trust is at the center of every horse-human partnership, and it's built gradually through emotional awareness. And when we show our horses that we notice and respect and are aware of their feelings, we lay the foundation for a relationship where they can depend on us. Our emotional steadiness signals to our horses that we are consistent and a safe presence in their life. So on the other hand, our emotional responses like frustration or impatience or even fear, which brings out the negative, that can have a profound impact. And horses, being deeply intuitive, pick up on those changes in us. So if our reactions are chaotic or unpredictable, it can create confusion, it can create fear. And every time that we have these dialogues, these negative dialogues, if you like, without awareness and without understanding, it erodes the trust that we're trying to build. So I'm not saying that you will never have a dialogue of frustration, or you will never have a dialogue where maybe fear is an element of it. But with the awareness and with the understanding and having empathy for self, shows the horse that we are emotionally intelligent and it is a phase that will pass. And by doing that, we build trust. And trust is ultimately all about empathy and emotional regulation. So when we choose to manage our emotions thoughtfully, we demonstrate the care and the awareness that we have for our horses and their sensitivities. Because we tend to dismiss certain behaviors because we are not sensitive to the sensitivities of our horse. And if we can be calm, respond calmly, and with that understanding, what we're showing our horses is that we value their perspective and that we are worthy of their trust. So I just want to take a moment to have a little reflection. So can you recall a time when your emotions affected your interaction with your horse? And how might emotional awareness have changed that moment? Can you think of anything that you can recall, any moment that you can recall? So yeah, just take a note about thinking if you can recall a time where your emotions have affected your interaction that you were having, and how might the emotional awareness have changed that moment? So how to recognize your horse's emotional state. Being very aware and attentive and observant about your horse's ears and eyes and body language in general is obviously going to be key. And I think the ears and the eyes reveal a lot about trust and curiosity and tension. They are, if we could just understand all the tiny nuances of how their eyes and ears work independently and together, because it's not, there's the whole of the horse that we have to keep our eye on. The one that I touched on earlier, which I think is more subtle but has huge impact, is the changes in breathing or movement. If their breathing slows, or if there is a sharp intake, I think we get so obsessed with the physical, as in, like I said earlier, the eyes, the ears, the tail swish, which are all so important, and I would not dilute those for a moment. But if we could add another layer and think about how our horses are breathing, we really will be able to understand when, imagine if you've got ears pricked, which means attentive and perhaps happy, where ears back are usually something negative. But if you can tie those into also breathing, ears back and a certain breath is curiosity, ears forward and a certain breath is anxiousness. So we have to make sure that we're able to also be aware of the smaller signs. And understanding the difference of the trust signs and the signs of tension. So, the relaxed posture and the signals of trust against a stiffness or agitation, or, for example, a cocked leg at the back, again, just to throw in a curveball, is often considered a horse at rest. Depending on how the ears and the breathing and the eyes are, it could also be a signal of readiness to leave. And it's so important to tie everything together. I think to truly connect with our horses, we need to become fluent in their unique non-verbal language. And that starts with observation, whether it is physical, whether it is emotional, whether it is mental, being really in tune with how your horse is in any given moment, in any given situation. But I will say again, pay attention to the breathing and pay attention to the movement. Horses that excel deeply or move smoothly are usually steady, with steady energy, are usually calm. Those with sharper breath and abrupt movements are not. And that's obviously the two obvious ends of the scale. But in the middle there is where it gets super complicated and where we really need to be aware of what is going on. And being able to understand the differences between trust and relaxation and tension. Like I said earlier, a cocked leg is not always about a horse resting. It can also be a time to respond to a stimulant that they are aware of. So what I would like you to do when you have, next time you have an opportunity, is to build on your emotional awareness and spend time just not asking anything of them, with no pressure, but just quiet observation and focusing on their body language and the dialogues that they're having between the two of them, because this exchange of emotional conversations is not just a horse-human dialogue, it is horse to horse or horse to other beings. Watch their eyes closely, watch the rhythm of their breathing. It will reveal how they're feeling and how they are interacting with their environment, and whether we have curiosity or tension. Where on the scale do you think they are? And I think once you've taken all this in, if you reflect on how you can adjust your own energy, your own emotional behaviors to align with their states. Can you soften your energy to reassure them, or perhaps mirror their calm presence to deepen the sense of connection? This is, again, two-way. We are dominant in our dialogues. When we arrive in their environment, we add that pressure. So what energy and what emotional state we bring is usually what they are going to mirror. But if we are aware of what we're bringing, we have an opportunity to absorb what they are bringing, what they are experiencing. And that's going to really get you into a situation where you are completely in tune with what they are doing, and building on that emotional awareness to create that trust that we all are seeking. So I'm going to leave you with a question to reflect on as we continue these conversations, and that is, how can emotional intelligence reshape the way you interact with your horse? Take a moment to consider the power of awareness, how recognizing and understanding both emotions, your emotions and the emotions of your horse, could open doors to that greater understanding. And imagine what's possible when you respond with compassion instead of reacting with frustration, and how awareness can truly change your partnership into one that is based on trust and intuition. You know, emotional intelligence, I think, isn't just a skill. It's a pathway to a deeper, more meaningful connection. And I think, like anything, it is something that we can build. We're all born with it, but I do think it's something that, like any muscle, we can exercise and have greater strength in it. So that is the end of my presentation. So I'm just going to now close this screen.